Hi Trending Topics community. US-bulgarian startup Leanplum is one of the fastest growing companies in Silicon Valley. Founded in 2012, the company has developed a mobile marketing platform that helps brands leverage on real-time data analytics on customer behavior. Today, Leanplum is celebrating the doubling of its second headquarters and main R&D office in Sofia. Clients like Tinder and NBC. Investments of almost $100 million. It definitely sounds like a success story. But it was not in the very beginning. We decided to drop by today and ask them how it all started with 2 engineers and before all the glory. What made you look at Bulgaria as a potential other location in the first place?
Yeah, so I often get this question whether Leanplum really is a Bulgarian company or not, because every time I talk to the media or somebody, I always say that Leanplum is a Bulgarian company as much as it is an American company. And even though we started in San Francisco, and reality is when we were starting the company, our first round of funding, which was just under $1 million, about a third of it came from Bulgarians.
Sofia is an engineering heavy hub, and a lot of ventures here are started by engineers, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have the business skills to do that. And that was your case back then in 2012. How did 2 engineers started a viable business, and what were the most important lessons you needed to learn, and have you ever had mentors along the way?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we couldn't have started a company without mentors, but I'd say the most important thing that we did is early on we knew we're just engineers and we need to learn how to do a company business, like a business, right? A real company. So we knew that we wanted to do an incubator, startup school, if you will. One of my biggest fears when we started Leanplum was that we're going to start building a company and we're going to build a product and then we're going to announce it and nobody's going to use it, right? And that was really my biggest fear. And in reality, what I realized later is that if you actually talk to customers and you ask them what their biggest problems are, and then you build a product for those problems, by definition, you're going to have people who want it, right? And so that was really kind of the mind shift that I had to, that I experienced in Techstars. And yes, we're engineers, but we had to learn pretty quick. And I think both my co-founder and I were not just engineers. Like we knew pretty early on that we wanted to be entrepreneurs. I know I was really excited about not just the engineering aspects, but the business aspects. And my co-founder, he'd already started a company when he was 14. And so, he was very interested in that kind of stuff. So I'd say we had the background, but we didn't necessarily have the skills, and we acquired the skills pretty much rapidly within 3 months time frame at Techstars.
So what was the first, the initial product development or the customer interviews?
So I actually remember this very distinctly. So we started Techstars, and week 2, we decided that we need to talk to customers. And we at the time had this idea that we're building a product by engineers for engineers. And of course, we're engineers, and we had just left our jobs at Google. And our idea was to do something similar based on our experience at Google, but in a completely different space, which is the mobile space. And we were doing something called A/B testing, so being able to experiment with mobile apps. And so we thought, okay, this is a product for engineers because we had built A/B testing for the web at Google. And so we went to this conference, and there was 200 people at the conference. And so my co-founder and I said, well, we need to talk to everybody at this conference. And it's literally 100 people each. So we printed out these sheets of paper with all the questions that you ask during a customer interview, customer development interview. And we even put it, I remember we put it in a clipboard because we didn't want to look like these people starting a company and being intrusive. We just wanted to look more like we're doing customer research, which is essentially what we're doing anyways. But essentially 2 days later, which is the conference, I had literally talked to everybody. 100 people out of the 200 people, I had talked to my co-founder also. And I had to push myself to do that. I'm not necessarily the person that would go in and talk to everybody. And a lot of people, that almost seem disturbed that you would ever talk to them at a conference, which is, I don't know why they would even go to the conference to begin with. But anyways, that was the most eye-opening moment, because I remember pretty early on when we started talking to people, I would go talk to the engineers and I would ask them, okay, well, what would you do? Would you buy this product? Are you interested? How do you do your own A/B testing? And all the engineers that we talked to were not interested in our product. And so that was interesting, because I thought I'm building a product for engineers, but turned out that it wasn't actually the engineers interested in our product, it was more the product managers. And so that was the original shift that we did that was pretty early on that we discovered, because the product managers, they were usually people tasked with optimization, they want to drive growth for their business, but they didn't necessarily have the tools to do it. But anyways, I didn't really necessarily know that ahead of time. So just talking to people and being able to understand what their day-to-day job is, how they spend their day, what they're measured on, and what their main blockers or pain points are in the, on the day-to-day basis, that was extremely valuable. So we learned literally, I mean, we pivoted the whole company just in those 2 days by knowing and realizing that we weren't targeting the right customer. And so that was just one of those early days, and we've done a lot more of that, but I'd say this was probably one of the most kind of eye-opening experiences I had, just starting as an entrepreneur.
Have you ever been in a moment where you're like, oh my God, where is this heading? What I'm going to do next? And
all the time, you know, absolutely.
What's
I mean, this
the mechanism to get out of that?
It's been ongoing since the very beginning, and the funny thing is, most people when they join Leanplum, you know, now or in the last year or two, it's sometimes you don't necessarily feel the same amplitude of the highs and the lows of the early days of the company, but they're still there and I still experience them. And I think that's really what's the most exciting part of being a startup, because in a startup, one day you feel like you're on top of the world and you're going to conquer the world, and the next day everything is crashing on you. And it's not like everything looks up and to the right. Well, you look back and you see, well, you know, we've grown quite a bit and we've been able to acquire some really great customers, build a really good product, but to get there, it wasn't a linear path up. It was more of an up and down, and you know, this constant fluctuation is what I experienced, and I feel like this is really the experience of every entrepreneur, and I've had this since day one. I remember when we were raising our first round of funding, I actually couldn't raise the money, and you know, I kept trying, and I was doing it in late November. And I later learned that people just don't want to invest in late November because they're already starting to think about their vacation, and I didn't know that, and so I was just thinking maybe our idea is bad, and maybe people don't like me, or you know, just all the things that I was just anxious about. And I remember as soon as January 1st came, all these emails I had just sent started coming back with people wanting to invest. But it was this process of just having, I think it was like 45 days of no investment. I was raising money, right, and having a complete lack of investment for that long period of time, I literally felt like crying. I did, and that was in the very beginning of the company, and I've had that feeling many times in various scenarios, and then the rest of it is just you know, just working hard, having people that you can talk to. I think that's actually why it's so important to have a co-founder in the early days, because you know, when you're up, maybe your co-founder is down and you can help him or her, or the other way around. And so those kind of fluctuations really happen a lot more frequently, I think, in the early days. So having somebody that you can talk to and be your emotional you know, support is actually pretty important.